I was going to say, speaking of TikTok.
TikTok.
This girl must be practicing witchcraft.
Oh, yeah. Newsweek.com. Headline, how TikTok is drawing young people into the occult. Just in time.
What is this? A fringe podcast online?
No, Newsweek, the central intelligence outlet. Just drawing on opinions created by lowly podcasters to make stories.
Yeah.
Witchcraft and spiritualism are often associated with dusty old books, red velvet drawing rooms, and a general sense of old-time curiosity. But thanks to social media, these practices have been given a new lease of life. In an age of uncertainty, loss, and economic turmoil, young people are increasingly turning to astrology and witchcraft for answers. Quote, modern technology has made it possible for people around the world to gain access to learning about mediumship and even practicing it virtually. Megan Alyssa, an evidential psychic medium with more than 234,000 followers on TikTok, told Newsweek. Evidential psychic mediums share evidence that they are communicating with the dead by claiming to reveal information that could not otherwise be known by the medium. Yeah, one of those.
You know, interesting how they just talk about this evidential psychic medium, explain it to you, and don't take even a split second to push back against psychics, online psychics, things like that. If this was a preacher who whatever, or an exorcist or some Christian thing, it would be framed in how he's a con man and taking advantage of people. But not so.
Yeah. She goes on to talk about how she teaches mediumship and stuff about the spirit world on Zoom and TikTok and Instagram Live. As of October 2022, hashtag Witch Talk, like TikTok, but Witch Talk, had amassed over 33.2 billion views globally on TikTok. Wow. It's a good number.
Just in time for Halloween.
Yeah, great number. I'm sure there's no ritualistic, numerological thing to it.
Yeah. Do you think we got that up to 33.3 from when this was posted at 6 a.m. this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, no, yesterday morning.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter.
Certainly we're at 33.3.
Yeah. By the time people are consuming it, having the ability, this is a quote, having the ability to teach worldwide and connect with someone anywhere in the world for a reading has been very helpful for people who would have never had access to this before, Alyssa said. Joey, and then they profile a bunch of people here. Joey Zoto, X-O-T-O, a digital entrepreneur with more than 184,000 TikTok followers, uses the platform to create paranormal experiences for his viewers.
Create.
He creates it for them. He talks about perception and In one video that's been viewed 1.7.
Real quick, I do want to give credit. I want to read this quote from him. This is from Joey Zoto. Quote, I would describe myself as an entertainer.
Yes.
Using concepts such as mentalism, hypnotism, and general showmanship to create paranormal experiences, Zoto said. So it's kind of like a what's that guy? Dan Brown? Was he the... Well, he was he that magician fella?
No. Dan Brown was the author of...
Darren, I think it's Darren Brown. Is a magician fella who his whole thing is... sort of debunking spiritualism, debunking religious experiences using hypnotism and mentalism, stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah. Yes. Good quote that he's sort of admitting to the fact that it's an entertainment quality to it, especially on TikTok and social media.
In a public quote, that's what he's saying. Because remember, Alex Jones says that he's an entertainer.
Well, it doesn't even matter because the end goal is the same thing. Create paranormal experiences for his viewers, right?
Got it.
Yeah. So continues. In one video that has been viewed 1.7 million times, Zoto attempts to connect his viewers to a spirit called Leah. In this video, Zoto describes how Leah will enter the viewer's arm and cause it to rotate. His post has received thousands of comments, with many claiming to have witnessed something otherworldly. Just straight up occultism right through the video screen. Yeah. And then there's they profile another girl here. I don't know how to say this. Meganalism medium. Quote, I debunk a lot of fear-based beliefs regarding spirits and hopefully remove stigma and fear around the work as I do so, she said. Quote, there's nothing to be afraid of. The spirit world consists of love, and it is this world here where we need to be more wary. Interesting. I think it's a direct shot at some people there. And then it goes in just more profiling. But yeah, in general, it's literally contacting spirits is sort of being highlighted on TikTok. Multiple billions, 33 plus billion views of hashtag witch talk, creating a whole subculture. And there's something we've been tracking, but it really is exploding.
I think it's an interesting mix. You know, you say literally contacting spirits, but within the profiles that they give, you have some who call it a parlor trick, basically, Joey Zoto. But then you have others saying that it is literal. It is sort of an actual spiritual connection there.
Yeah, well, I think that's
having both of those present in some way sort of disarms the reader, disarms the participant, you know, because you can draw in those who think it is real, literally, or those who just kind of want to be entertained by it or something.
It truly
kind of covers all the bases.
It really is interesting though, because, you know, everybody grows up on ritual, whether it's from a secular world or, you know, a biblical world, whatever. Everyone has ritual built into them. So witchcraft being sort of a cultural norm in the secular context nowadays. And that's also, you know, Newsweek really doing its job. Here's another Newsweek article. I'm not going to read this one, but the headline is "The Witch Camps Where Hundreds of Elderly Women are Left to Die." And it's really sort of the woke social credit kind of, not social credit. What's the word I'm looking for? It's just sort of a virtue signaling of sorts in the context of you know, the witches of, in particular, Africa, Ghana more specifically, in this article being highlighted as being
making
targeted.
It a social justice issue.
Right. Social justice. Thank you. Yeah. Social justice issue. Yeah. So
it's interesting because I believe it was 2021, could have been earlier, could have been 2020, but we saw the court cases in the UK pardoning the witches of the past. And I think we saw some in Massachusetts where there was actually laws passed pardoning some of the witches that were, you know, killed in Salem, or alleged witches or whatever. But yeah, really this ongoing social justice campaign to sort of atone for the wrong done to witches or those suspected of witchcraft in the past. Right. And that's another example of that.
Yeah. And it's just interesting how there's these groups that they highlight, like the Humanist Global Charity. The Humanist Global Charity works with those in witch camps. They talk about these witch camps where all these witches hide out to not get killed, to teach crucial skills like hygiene and basic science. Interesting. They're being taught basic science, crucial skills like hygiene. So just very,
you know, it's interesting because in the popular talk about witchcraft, witches are sort of being redefined.
Yes.
In the occult sort of, I don't know, space, the social space, where they're not necessarily even connected to witchcraft in a supernatural way.
Right.
Sometimes they are, but there's also other times, because I know we've gotten, anyways. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but it's sort of being redefined as independent woman. Sometimes even literally that simply. Yeah. Not all the time, but sometimes, where it was these, you know, women who did not subscribe to the patriarchy and lived outside of the normal lifestyle and didn't take a husband and things like this. And they were called witches. And that's a little bit what's going on in this Africa witch village story, is that, you know, the social justice take on it is that these are women who are being shunned from society, who are being exiled because they're not participating in culture in its whatever typical form. And, you know, how that is a social justice issue. And it's been interesting to watch how that conversation and the language used to, you know, apply a sort of social justice obligation, tying it in with feminism and the patriarchy and things like that. And certainly there's probably a degree of truth to both those sides, but the fact that it is in the context of witches and witchcraft is just a sort of very specific, interesting reframing of the issue.
Yeah, and she concludes, there's a quote from a lady that's being quoted multiple times here in this article, who's sort of she's kind of going, not against, but putting the United Nations on the hot seat, like, hey, why aren't you guys doing more about witchcraft? And, it's different from COVID because in the West, people don't get affected by the accusations of witchcraft. And she concludes with this quote: all hands must be on deck to make witch hunting in Africa history by 2030.
Oh, interesting.
Like signaling to the UN people, like, make this an issue.
2030.
Yeah, make this a priority in the West. Everybody needs to fight for the witches in Africa. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, again, I do want to just give the stipulation. The witch hunting also creates victims of those who maybe aren't practicing witchcraft and are sort of not fitting into the thing. So I could see how that would be an important distinction to make, but the language being used is not helping to distinguish.
It's just one big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And to them, it probably doesn't matter. I got an interesting witch talk thing here for you. This is coming from NBC News. The headline: why paganism and witchcraft are making a comeback. Okay.
Tell us NBC News.
Yeah. So this is by Antonio Pagliarulo, author of the forthcoming The Evil Eye, The History, Mystery, and Magic of the Quiet Curse.
Oh, good. Ooh, good guy to have quote on witchcraft in America.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, in the run-up to Halloween, I visited Salem, Massachusetts for the first time since the pandemic began. In renewing my annual Halloween pilgrimage, I was bowled over by what I found in the Witch City. Bigger crowds, longer lines, and a wider and welcome array of merchandise geared toward many different religious traditions and ethnic identities. Interesting how the witchcraft is not just includes different religious traditions, but also ethnic identities. Amid the curious crowds in black capes and conical hats, bags overflowing with DIY spell kits and candles to enhance prosperity, I overheard the same question: is magic really real? Really fascinating. Now, if he actually overheard this question, who knows? But this is sort of the center point of this article. Is magic really real, even in the crowds of people who are sort of celebrating it?
Yeah.
And it goes on. For me, the answer is yes. For me.
NBC News saying magic is real. Yeah. Yes, magic is real.
Yeah, yes.
Tell us more.
Magic is real. I am one of 1 million plus Americans who, whether proudly, secretly, or dabbling through the power of consumerism, practice some form of witchcraft. Witchcraft, which includes Wicca, paganism, folk magic, and other New Age traditions, is one of the fastest growing spiritual paths in America. That one part, dabbling through the power of consumerism. Now, we've often broken down, or I've at least gone on long tirades about, what is magic? How does it express itself and manifest? I've gone into the legal system, the very act of writing, the language, written language as a sort of magical roots, having magical roots, but also things like logos as sigils, corporatism as a form of magic, the legal system, stuff like that. And in this case, dabbling through the power of consumerism.
Yeah.
And I think it just fits in quite nicely with some of the broader conversations about magic, which is, the way in which we interact with the world, in the essence of consumerism, certainly pieces of capitalism, things like this. They are very magical in their sort of root concepts. The exchanging of value, the symbols on our currency, the things like this, all very magical. But again, NBCnews.com right here. I mean, they may be also referring to the sort of Etsy industry of witchcraft, Instagram ads selling spell kits, things like this. But I don't think that actually, some might be tempted to sort of take away from its importance in that case. But I think it actually adds to the sort of power and the hold that, consumerism as a type of magic is concerned. Then it goes into this part. It just kind of gives some history here. In 1990, Trinity College of Connecticut estimated there were 8,000 adherents of Wicca. In 2008, the U.S. Census Bureau figure was 342,000. A 2014 Pew Research Center study increased that projection several times over in assessing that 0.4% of Americans identified as pagan, Wiccan, or New Age. Most modern pagan worship, of which Wicca is one type, draws on pre-Christian traditions in revering nature. By 2050, it said, the number of Americans practicing, quote, other religions, faiths outside of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, would triple, due largely to switching into other religions such as Wicca and pagan religions. The precise number of witches in America is difficult to determine because many practitioners are solitary, either by choice or by circumstance, do not openly identify as such, but the growth is evident, especially to those who've made it their life's work to study the community. Yeah, it's people's life's work.
Interesting. The circumstances that would cause them to be solitary. I wonder what circumstances caused people to be solitary. I don't know.
Well, exclusion guns, witch hunts.
Oh, that. I thought we were talking about a larger world event. The scary virus.
Yes. Yeah. A pandemic type of thing. Yes. And then it goes into some very specific thing. He kind of the author talks about their own petitioning to Archangel Michael.
Archangel Michael.
Angelology.
Yeah. It's interesting how that's brought up. She has the Catholic background there, the Roman Catholic / pagan background.
Right.
And it talks about the petitioning of Archangel Michael for protection.
Yeah, it goes into rituals and old world rituals. But then there's this article here, which is pretty interesting. Above the picture of the pencils. Paragraph. At the heart of these practices is the fact that witchcraft enables me to see the world through a more balanced lens. I've felt the reassuring presence of the otherworldly in the midst of difficult circumstances, and I know that magic happens when I summon the strength to draw boundaries or stir away the guilt that bubbles up if I choose self-care over sacrifice.
Self-sacrifice.
So going back to sort of the self-care phenomena, which we've covered in the past as well. A lot of people have interesting, varying viewpoints on self-care instead of self-sacrifice, things like this. But it kind of leaning towards this idea that the practice in witchcraft is for you and balances your worldview and assuages some guilt and things like that. Kind of playing the role that religion has traditionally played.
Sure.
But just in a cooler way, and one that has 33 million TikTok views.
Yeah. And also, just biblically, if you're a follower of Jesus, it's very, Luke 9:23 talks about whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, sort of a self-sacrificial message going on. But in this case, it's like, well, no, enough of the self-sacrifice. It's more of a self-care context.
Skipping down a bit. It's understandable that some adherents have criticized the commercialization, arguing that Halloween witch costumes perpetuate negative stereotypes. The social justice thing is back. And the selling of DIY spell kits trivialize sacred practices.
They fight amongst themselves.
Very interesting. But this trend has created space for recognition and representation.
Good.
The proliferation of witchcraft reflects two timeless and universal urges: the need to draw meaning from chaos, and the desire to control the circumstances around us. And I thought this was a very interesting detail to have put in there, because in the sort of traditional Christian explanation of witchcraft, at least that I was sort of given growing up, was that witchcraft is, doesn't have to take the form of like wearing a pointy hat and doing spells and stuff, but it is the urge to control, to exert your own will on the world around you. That was always how witchcraft was sort of broadly described to me growing up in my church circumstance. And it's interesting that right here, I mean, they kind of confirm what I was told as a kid, which is, witchcraft is fulfills the need, at least the desire to control circumstances around us. So it's your own will over God's will, is sort of, to put it in the words of my childhood.
It is interesting too, where they say that with the dire catastrophes brought on by climate change, wars, and loss of rights, it's not surprising that witchcraft appeals to seeking to mend what's broken in ourselves and the wider world. Well, if this witchcraft methodology is true, then the dire catastrophes, climate change, and the loss of rights is also the witchcraft of somebody, right?
So, yeah.
But what about that? What about those people?
I just had a conversation with somebody that I'm trying to perhaps get an interview with, who kind of describes themselves as, an occult practitioner. And the one thing is very funny conversing with this person. The one thing, and I was surprised to find that we were exactly in agreement on, which is weird to say.
Basil, the shill, agreeing with the occultist. Go ahead. Yeah, what's
occult practitioner.
Sure.
Was that the government and the powers that be practice witchcraft, their own form of witchcraft. And this person was sort of a anti-authoritarian type.
Sure.
So we kind of, had that in common. But what we both could agree on is that politicians and governments and bureaucracies at their highest level are extremely powerful magicians. And so it's a very interesting sort of worldview that we shared in that. This is how that is the awakening class, maybe.
The PSYOP awakening class, where we've seen the mixture within like the QAnon movement, where it's sort of a mix between New Agey and biblical values and stuff. It's all mixed in together. Well, maybe it's on the premise of agreement that, the government definitely are a bunch of high level magicians trying to pull one on us, and we won't stand for it, All
right. Then it goes into, connecting witchcraft with physics, quantum entanglement, stuff like this, making the connection between physics and the supernatural that scientists have always hated, but others actually agree with. Usually the ones studying it agree with it, but it's the sort of layman scientists that don't like it. Monday, as millions of people celebrate Halloween, known to witches as Samhain or Samhain, the pagan festival honoring the dead, countless jack-o'-lanterns will decorate doorsteps throughout America. I will take particular comfort in knowing that these glowing pumpkins, a lasting pagan custom, are embraced by so many of us. It's a reminder that magic can be both a beacon in the night and a source of hope and healing when we need it most. Aww. Thanks,
NBC Peacock at the very end.
Yeah.
It's its own magical sigil at the very end of the article.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, you're right. They do put the logo as if it's like a typeface character at the end of the thing, ending with its own, chaos sigil there. Yeah, very interesting.
Interesting.